Dolphin Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And it's time to play America's favorite game on a Friday. Where in the world is Clinton Yates?
I, sir, am in Wichita, Kansas, home of the Wichita State Shockers. If you care about college baseball, you've heard of them. But if you also happen to like pizza, you might know that this is where the first ever Pizza Hut was started. So this is where I am.
I'm
on assignment, of course.
Yeah,
for other things.
I didn't know that until you FaceTimed me and told me about it, a couple hours ago. I was like, wow.
I mean, I didn't know it until I woke up this morning either. So, it's very pertinent information. And let's just say the Road to Perdition vibes are very heavy in terms of just what the town looks like. Yeah.
So why are you in Wichita, Kansas?
Because a couple of months ago, some individuals decided that they wanted to steal a statue dedicated to Jackie Robinson in this park known as McAdams Park in Wichita. And basically, a community came together to make sure that whoever took this was found, and whoever recovered the statue in its pieces basically figured a way to get it back. So Major League Baseball donated $100,000 to the city in order to be able to rebuild the statue. There was a lot of hubbub about why and when it was taken. To make a long story short, effectively, a bunch of guys tried to scrap it for drug money, and they got caught. Oof. So, yeah, tough deal, but I think Wichita learned a lot about itself throughout the course of the entire process. And
so for the long story, E60 coming to a television screen near us at some point in the nearish future?
Bingo, bango, Gregory. That's exactly right.
All right. Clinton with us just for his Friday visit. You never know where it's going to go, so you never know where in the world it's going to take us. But there's two big topics I want to talk to you about today, both baseball adjacent. One is the rash of pitching injuries. We'll get there in a second. But we have learned a lot more in the last, really, 72 hours about the Shohei Ohtani gambling case. And it doesn't look very good for the interpreter, who is now in federal custody. And some of the initial reporting really undersold this story, Clinton, which is saying something because the initial reporting was really bad. Now we know it was way more money. They've got all kinds of text messages from the interpreter. And obviously he is seemingly in deep trouble. Federal investigators don't arrest you unless they've got a pretty damn good case. So on the baseball and Ohtani sides, which is a sports talk show, is really frankly more what we care about. What do you make of this now that we have this new information?
Well, I think we are beyond the point of acting as if reasonable ignorance is a decent thing to assume from a guy like Shohei Ohtani. I'm sorry. When you get up into the tens of millions of dollars, and you start telling me that I'm supposed to believe that you changed a couple settings, and therefore that's how a certain person didn't know that amounts of money were being taken out of their bank account, and therefore they are reasonably not involved. I'm sorry, Craig, that just doesn't pass the smell test to me. And what's the biggest bummer about this overall is that, sure, let's just say Ipe is a bad dude. Let's just say he was entirely in this the entire time to scam money from a person. That says something to me about the judgment of not just Shohei and not just Ipe, but also the teams that were involved. It's just a really messy and kind of a sad situation when you think about a player like Ohtani, who is representing so much, not just in terms of his own heritage being Japanese, not just in terms of his ability to be a two-way player, something we have not seen literally in a lifetime in Major League Baseball, but just like as a guy, as an athlete, as a person that we like to watch. You think, man, you've been dealing with this joker for this long? I just don't like how it feels overall, and specifically to the point of Major League Baseball and gambling, et cetera. It also has a very bad look. I'm not very proud to be a Major League Baseball fan today, and that's ultimately what my biggest takeaway is, regardless of the ins and outs of the investigation.
Yeah, so the thing is for me, sometimes when you have these big, giant stories is I like to ask, what if we take people at face value? What does it mean? And often, that's not to say that we shouldn't be skeptical, but sometimes when we take people at face value, it's still not very good for them. And is a different kind of bad. But the Deshaun Watson story was one of those for me, where I'm like, you guys listen to what this man is saying? This man is an awful person. The stuff he admitted to, it may not go technically because of the way the laws are written into criminality, but this is not good, and no franchise should ever put their fans in a position to root for this person. And, for Ohtani, I don't know that it's like necessarily to that level because we're talking about gambling and versus harm to other human beings directly. But I do think that like the concept of like, okay, let's say that Ohtani didn't know. That's not a good reflection of him. And like you said, then to allow Ippei around, if you're the Angels and the Dodgers, you got to have some rules. You can't just let the athletes, even if it's Shohei Ohtani, even if he's the best player in the league, like you are still the organization, you are still the bigger entity, and you can't just allow them to do whatever they want. And I feel like in sports that happens far too often. And the teams are like, how could we possibly? And then the other teams are like, well, we would have probably done the same thing. Glad it's not us. And that's just not good enough.
I agree. And there's a standard of just general behavior here that I just don't love. And part of it is not about trying to be out to get anybody or looking to blame somebody. It's just, again, what could have been is so much different than what is. Shohei Ohtani is mega popular. This dude is a household name across the globe as a baseball player. That is unheard of these days. We know nothing about this guy. Once again, his dog's name was headline news in Los Angeles when we found out about it. We could have so much more with Shohei. We could know things about him. We could like this guy in different ways to the point that if his jerk of an interpreter was stealing money from him, we'd say, whatever, man. We just want to know what you like to eat for breakfast or whatever. But we don't have that. We've got a guy that's super secretive and who only presents himself to the world through certain people, and that is his business, his prerogative, and his right. But in the case of PR and what it looks like as a public-facing person, as an athlete, if this is what comes up when you finally pull back the covers, it's just not fun for anybody involved, and I hate it. There's just no other way around it. I don't like this situation at all for the Dodgers. I don't like it for big league baseball. I don't like it for baseball fans either.
Yeah, no, and then, of course, you put your more skeptical journalist or just skeptical person hat on, and you're like, well, what else is behind the curtain? And that's,
Bingo, bango. Yep.
Yeah, so who knows? Clint Yates with this, of course, ESPN commentator, host of ESPN Daily, which you can listen to daily on your favorite podcast app. I'm doing it every week. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't stop. You can't stop.
It's funny every time.
So the other big story, obviously, in baseball right now, not fun either. The rash of injuries to big name pitchers. I will start open ended. I certainly have some theories of my own in listening to some folks and being in the strength and conditioning world. But when you hear or when you see pitchers seemingly going down every week with these arm injuries, these devastating arm injuries, like why do you think this is happening in current modern day baseball?
Well, Gregory, this is where our worlds overlap extremely in terms of everything having to do with physicality, everything having to do with strength training and baseball. What's happening at the big league level right now is a symptom of what is going on at the lower levels. And I could talk about this for an hour, nonstop, no breaks. I won't. But here's what the basic facts are. Kids these days are taught to throw max effort, max velo, no matter what. It's what gets you onto showcase teams. It's what gets you onto high school teams. It's what gets you onto college teams. Rapsodo, for those of you who don't know what that is basically a pitching machine that basically tracks all of your analytics for how you throw. And the numbers that come out of that are basically what makes recruits these days. So there is a mindset at the lower levels of the game that forces kids to max out their bodies in ways that once they get to the higher levels, be it college, be it minor league ball, be it big league ball, as far as I'm concerned, a lot of guys just don't have a chance. And that's what is really difficult to kind of put into numbers in terms of like, how do you gauge when we're maxing humans out too much in any particular sport? There's no real way to quantify that, because you can't really measure the people who didn't make it as a result of poor training methods as youth to try to get to the next level. So when we see guys at the major league level blowing their arms out, double TJs for certain guys, Dustin May in Los Angeles comes to mind, Shohei Ohtani comes to mind. You're just sort of like, man, I wonder how many other people this has affected. Well, you can look around at any major league or non-major league city in America and see a bunch of people whose arms are blown out, whose careers are over because they were trying to throw curveballs when they were 13. I'm going to take a breath here because it actually upsets me because this is something that, in fact, Major League Baseball does not really, in fact, have the jurisdiction to regulate. It's something that the game and the modernity and the general sort of analytics mind has pushed to a point where we are maxing out the human body on a level that is just not sustainable, and I hate it for kids who play baseball.
No, I hate it too. And I think there's a lot of different factors, some more at the major league level, and then some, obviously, like you said, this is starting very young. One thing that I do find very interesting is like, and I'm glad you brought up Ohtani, is because like he didn't come up through the American baseball system.
Right.
He came up in a different culture on a different the other side of the world, and so you're seeing the fact that there is no discrimination here in arm injuries. I think is an interesting thing that tells me there's probably multiple reasons why this is happening. Because it's not, if it was just happening to American pitchers that were raised in the American Southeast, then it's like, well, we need to look at the baseball
in Wichita
culture
or whatever. Yeah,
right.
no, I get it. And let me jump in here quick a second. Here's my thing though. It's that dudes are playing too much baseball. I don't know how to explain this to people. Like there's just too much throwing happening, and it sounds so basic. It sounds so simple, ridiculous, but it's true. You shouldn't be playing baseball 300 days a year. You just shouldn't. And when we get to the point where we talk about the differences in specialization and all this other stuff that has to do with youth sports and the business side of it as well, if every Joe Blow from Kokomo has a daggone travel team, you know what I'm saying, who thinks they're going to be whatever, so therefore you've got to play for him, and you're never home on a weekend, you're never doing anything else, it sucks. This is what the result of that behavior is. Human bodies are not capable of doing what they need to do when they get to the top level. It's an issue in basketball as well.
Yeah, well, the specialization is huge because the body builds resilience in suboptimal positions, basically. Like your body, like it's if you train in one way all the time, your body is not exposed to other things, then all of a sudden in a game your body's exposed to that thing that doesn't happen often but happens on occasion, and maybe happens a lot more often in other sports, and your body's like, oh, I know what to do with this. I think that's definitely a big part. I'd also say like it's not even throwing too much, it's throwing max effort too much, because there is something to working at a suboptimal level, and from the strength and conditioning side of it, that is going to actually keep you healthy. I think one of the big things that is in the NBA, like as part of the NBA's problem that they're kind of backtracking on and are I think heavily looking at, is did we actually make a mistake limiting the number of back-to-backs? Because what we've actually done is taken out practice time. And so now every time these guys play basketball, it's happening at game intensity, where practice, where you can control the intensity and control the volume, is no longer really a part of the schedule because you play every other day. And so it's actually taken the control out of coaches' hands because you're trying to win games. And so there is like a science meets performance element of this. And then the last thing I'll say, Clinton, I saw this thread on a bite from, I think it was a Rays pitcher the other day, talking about the regulation of substances, not like performance enhancing substances, like like hand substances, rosin, sunscreen. And that's kind of the one he used to use. And now that that's being regulated more, he's like, I'm still expected to get the same spin and whatever, and it's hard for me to actually hold the ball and control it. I have to grip much tighter. And immediately I was like, oh, I know where this is going. And basically, all the muscles in your forearm now are working 5-10-fold compared to what they would if you just had to use the substances to grip. And thus, you are putting undue pressure on your arm when you used to not have to. That is a massive negative impact on the elbow. So while I understand baseball's desire to make sure that everything's on the up and up, I actually don't think that is a good thing from an injury prevention standpoint, both from you're putting a ton of stress on pitchers' arms, and the alternative is they don't have as much grip, and you could have a 98-mile-per-hour fastball slip out of a guy's hands, and that is an injury risk flying towards a batter at 98 miles an hour.
You are exactly correct. We are very deep in physicality chalk talk here, and I get that. But I think the larger thing that I would compel baseball fans to understand is that this ruins careers. Kids having Tommy John surgery in high school to ward off a potential injury that they think they might get down the line is whack. That cannot be how we're operating on a simple human level, to me, as far as youth sports are concerned, as far as amateur sports are concerned, in general. And I get it. There are a lot to do in terms of decisions to be made about how people do things differently versus others. But for me, the experience of what the whole point of being an athlete is, to me, is not just max out until you're done and throw that guy on the heap and then we're finished here. That makes people hate the game that they ended up loving, and it's just, you have no idea how many kids I know, how many kids I've seen have followed their careers, who had one random injury and they just would not go back because they knew what it was going to take in order to get back to that level, and it's something that people are looking at as a number and not as anything that has to do with actually being a person, and it's very depressing, to be honest.
It is. It is. And it's also not effective. And to me, that's the thing that, then we get into like a cultural conversation. But I think it's Norway banned scorekeeping for any sport. Like it's illegal to keep score before like the age of 12. And they're winning more gold medals per capita than any other country on earth, because then your focus is on development and enjoyment of the game, and it keeps kids in sports healthier longer, and they wind up winning in the end because their best athletes actually make it. And by the way, they were developed the right way because the focus was on doing the thing correctly, not just being like, oh, look, this 9-year-old grew faster than the other ones. Let's give him the ball and win the game.
Fun fact, if you've ever read the book Soccernomics, Norway gets the highest actual rating for like soccer nations in terms of participation, in terms of execution, and in terms of people just enjoying themselves. So that doesn't surprise me at all.
I think that's actually where I got that from. And I did read Soccernomics because you told me to.
I told you to read it, Gregory. That's why you read it.
It's still sitting. I'm actually, I can't say that I've read it. I'm still reading it like 4 years later. This is a very large book, but it is literally sitting on my nightstand, and I do tap into it now and again.
I have to go eat pizza, Gregory. Goodbye.
Okay, go eat pizza at the first Pizza Hut ever. Clint Yates, everybody, with us on The Hoffman Show.
This is The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.